Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Glue Guys podcast, the Glue Guys episode 5, and we are back here with Chad. Chad, tell the people how you doing.
Man, I'm doing good. We're recording on the Monday of Labor Day weekend, so the Sunday scaries are setting in here right after this podcast, but I'm alive and well right now. How about yourself?
That's awesome. I'm great. Just got back, from the Outer Banks in time to record, and I was really excited to record this week because I was excited that for the very first time in the history of really any college sport, but specifically college football, we got our national champion crowned after week 1. I was really excited about that. And Chad, the people might not be as familiar with what I'm talking about, so why don't you give them a little idea of, kind of what we're referring to when we say that?
Yeah, so I'll actually peel back the curtain. I think 2 episodes ago we had you had some sort of rant about, or we started off the podcast with some sort of rant based on some Twitter phenomenon that was going on. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we did that a couple episodes back. So now we're doing part 2 of that. So as we talked about, Ethan and I from time to time are prone to, we're not above coming up with a decent opening segment just based off of how mad we get at social media. So, and in this day and age with sports, it's really easy to find some stuff to get mad about with social media. None more than this Colorado Buffaloes football thing. This is 2 years in a row, actually, that they've won the Week 1 national championship. So there used to be a big push where there's a joke where Russell Wilson was always the MVP of the first month of the NFL. That went on for about 4 years. So Colorado has the belt now for 2 years in a row, Week 1 national champion.
Yeah, so I thought it was interesting as well. I don't think that there has been as big of a push for a team being good after beating an FCS school. But it's kind of hilarious to me because I actually feel bad partly for even Dion and the players.
Because, yeah, 100%.
Because they play into it, of course, but they play into it just as much as any other college football team does. They're like,
right.
Hey, we got swagger, we're back, we're this, we're that. And that's kind of what you have to do if you want to be a major college football team. So I don't even really fault them for it anymore.
I don't know if I could come up with a list of 5 guys who are 30 plus that if you tried to tell them they were awesome, they would deny it. So to come up with a list of 5 18 to 22-year-olds who would do it, I don't think is realistic. And then you throw in Dion, who's got, the resume he has in the sport, so he's never going to walk into any room thinking anyone's better than him. So,
Yeah, and then, but just like when people are saying, like, oh, see, Shedeur, I mean, like, RG3's tweet, where he was like, this performance shows that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter not only are, like, some of the best players in the country, but each of them could be the number 1 pick in the draft. It's like, so making plays against an FCS school in week 1 where you win by 5, that is to show that you're the number 1 pick in the draft. I'm not even denying Travis Hunter's talent because he's outrageous in my opinion. But I mean, this Shedeur Sanders, like the amount of quarterbacks, like people are pretending like this is the first time we've ever seen a college quarterback put up numbers. And I don't understand how. I mean, this happens every single year. The Big 12 is now probably the worst. Actually, not even. They're probably the 3rd best conference in the country, and it's not like we've never seen the 3rd best conference in the country have guys play out of conference games and put up numbers. So I don't really. Shit. You could have said half this stuff about Daniel Jones when he was at Duke. Making plays against
Matt Barkley at USC, kind of the year before he came out. All those
exactly.
guys.
It's just like, oh, these guys are putting up numbers. These guys are making plays. These guys are uber talented. It's like, oh, okay, Who are we talking about? Oh, a guy named Jimmy Clausen. Remember the name. Oh, okay. Got it. So, I just really had to get
Hackenberg.
Chill on Hackenberg, bro. I still got my Hackenberg stock. All right, I think the Jets did him a little bit dirty. But yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, here's the thing, and you kind of summed it up perfectly. It's not Dion. Like, I've actually surprisingly been more pro Dion than I thought I was going to be. Like, I didn't, we talked about this countless times, and we'll just mention it again. Neither one of us are college football fans. We really don't care about the sport to any real degree, and as we know, my fandom for the season is done since LSU lost their opener. So now there's no chance of getting me in for this season. Yeah. You're a lot. You live another week.
By the way, just very quickly, that Colorado State team is who this Colorado team had to go down to the wire with last year, and Texas just beat them by 70. So
well, that was the thing I was gonna say is I like Dion. Dion is he's done what he's supposed to do, right? Got people talking about the program. He's recruited his ass off. Honestly, I mean transfer portal especially, that's a whole different game, so we'll kind of figure out in a couple of years, what does transfer portal recruiting success really lead to? Does that mean anything? I think we need a few more years of data to figure that out. But, Travis Hunter, like you said, undeniable how good he is. Very, very awesome. Shedeur Sanders, I actually think he's really good. Would have no qualms with him being a first-round quarterback in the draft at this point. Now, when you start talking about the number one, that's where you kind of lose me. Now, the argument can be, you look at the top of the quarterback class this year, is there really that guy? Carson Beck is the number one guy right now, and I don't think anyone was so impressed with him that he can't be kicked off that mantle. But when you're, exactly like you said, when you're to the point where you're doing the RG3 tweets, it's too much. Right? And it's too much from the social media standpoint of it, from the people who, I would just love and this shit started last year, and you were so smart to bring up the Colorado State point because they started off 3-0. Like you said, beat Colorado State, and I think it was double overtime or something like that. And then all of a sudden they're ranked. Then all of a sudden they're ranked 24th.
We beat a 4-win team from last year.
Yeah, and everyone fell into the thing of, oh man, they beat TCU in week 1, the defending national championship runner-up. TCU returned 4 starters, no exaggeration, 4 of the 22 starters returned for that TCU team. So that was not the same team. They did not play that same team that was the national championship runner-up, and got charges brought against them by Georgia. But so this is 2 years in a row where Colorado, the hype is just too much, and I get it. People want to see them do good. It'd be a great story. It's awesome. I don't think anyone's really focused on the Colorado tradition at this point, even though they have had, some really good years back in the Big 8. I think it was. You and I were texting about it.
The Big 12 championship in 2005, the year that Texas won the national championship, they made the Big 12 championship.
Fair enough.
That was one of my personal favorite games. 70-3 in the Big 12 championship. But remember, that Texas team can't be put in a conversation for one of the best teams ever, even though they won by 70 points in their conference championship and beat what was up to that time maybe the greatest team of all time, either them or that Miami team. A team that was going for a 3 straight national championship. But, that's neither here nor there. We just wanted to get, that quick Colorado in and just calm down. If they go and they start and they're 6-0 and then we start doing whatever, it's okay, yeah.
Well, how about this? I don't even give a shit what the record is. I just want to see him actually play somebody. Play somebody before we start losing our minds. So, I don't have the schedule pulled up.
State-Michigan game. It's if Michigan would have came back and won it on that last second kick, it's oh shit, Michigan are back. It's
yeah. Exactly. And maybe it's because the bar is so much lower, right, for a school like Colorado right now. The bar is so much lower for what true success is. I mean, shit, last season was a success for them because they had people talking about them. Much less actually. Yeah, I was gonna say much less actually winning 3 games. So let's not sit here and act like they have improved, but they've improved on absolutely, being an absolute joke and one of the worst, if not the worst, Power 5 conference teams in the modern era. So, I don't know. Did we solve anything with this conversation? I don't think so, but that's not what we're here to do. We're just here to vent. I got their schedule pulled up. They're at Nebraska this week, and then they got the rematch at Colorado State, and then home for Baylor. So, give it that first month. If we're looking at 4-0, even 3
games, I'm done. If they're ranked after 4 games, I'm done.
No, well, because look, I think at Nebraska and then home for Baylor. Baylor was horrible actually last year. I think they were 4-8 or something. But that's a better quote-unquote first four than what they looked like in the first 3 games last season when they ended up getting ranked. So I think the fun will eventually stop, October 12th when they have to play Kansas State at home, who's ranked, and then Arizona, who's somehow in the Big 12. But when they have those, and that's a stretch of 5 ranked games out of 7 for them, so it could get difficult real early. But let's just enjoy the ride for this next month. It's like a volatile stock. It's just going to go up and down.
And speaking of enjoying the ride, this next segment is really going to teach us why enjoying the ride in sports and enjoying the ride in your life really is really, really important. So Chad wanted to know the backstory of this. I decided to wait until we actually started recording to get into it. I brought up this segment. He was like, why? What is this?
Yeah.
And I was listening to it.
Not that I was against it. It was just not one of those things where you just like, hey, you know what? You're sitting around one day like, man, you know what topic I think we should do? This. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm listening to a Bill Simmons podcast the other day from 2018. I'm listening to the rewatchables for Good Will Hunting, which, if for those of you that don't know, Bill Simmons basically reviewing movies with other people that work for The Ringer, his company, his whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to it, and they're talking about Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and they're like, we got in this movie 2 future like super movie stars. And it's like, it's crazy watching it back now, because it's like seeing Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid on the same team at the same time, knowing that they're going to be great for the next however many years. And I was really sitting there, I was like, man, that was a magical time we were living in back in 2018, 2019, where it was like, man, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, like, this is basically a guaranteed, at least finals trip. Like, this is guaranteed consistent championship contention for, like, the next 10, 12 years. This is, like, guaranteed. And then I thought about it, and I was like, man, this happens all the time. OKC back in 2012, you would be like, okay, they're going to be in the finals every year for a decade. All these things that are like, we feel like are guarantees as sports fans. And then, like, 5 years later, they're not even relevant. Like, they're not even true. They're, like, no part of it is correct. And so that's when I had thought, and I was like, let's, me and Chad, come up with a couple of statements that were 100% true 5 years ago. Like, almost, like, not unequivocally, because obviously people have other opinions and things like that, but we're pretty much 1,000% true. But now if you said it, it would be like one of the most wicked things of all time. It'd be like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, if you said it to a guy that's just getting into the sport, they'd be like, how did you even come to that? Okay? So, my first one, I wanted to just do a little appetizer, because, this one's just more representative of what the overall topic
How many did you come up with, by the way? We didn't even talk about this.
I came up with 3, but this first one is kind of just more, again, just appetizer, just, get people introduced to the idea. I didn't really flesh it out.
Explain the rules, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's that 5 years ago, Kawhi was the best player in the entire world. And it wasn't really, basically, if you listen to any media from, like, July even August, September, like now, like literally 5 years ago from today, every single person will say, he's the best. Maybe not he's going to win MVP or he's going to win this or that, because sometimes that gets a little bit dicey. But it's like, he's the best player in the world. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA. He's one of the best scorers in the NBA. He's a great facilitator. He just won the title. He just won Finals MVP with frickin' Toronto. And now he can choose wherever he wants to go, and he can make happen whatever he wants to make happen, because he's the best. And if you guys remember, that summer, it was like, man, Kawhi's about to go to the Lakers, and the Lakers are going to have LeBron and Kawhi. I don't think they had
They had Davis, because they did the Davis trade, like, right after the finals happened, so they actually had him going into the free agency period. Which,
and so, like, there was a legitimate, like, case that they were going to have 3 of maybe the best 10 players in the world, and maybe 2 of the top 3 on their team. And it was like a very, very scary moment in the NBA. And then he went to the Clippers, brought Paul George over there, and it was like, man, they're still going to have, like,
a great team.
A great team, 2 of the best 15 players, including number 1, which always gives you a chance to win the title. And nothing's happened since. If you were to ask people, name your top 25 players in the NBA, I don't even know if Kawhi would get brought up in that conversation, just simply because of the injuries, the inconsistency, the lack of minutes played over the past 5 years. And so it's just crazy how again 5 years ago, Finals MVP, won the Finals in Toronto, no less, and now it's like. I mean, I don't know. People keep giving him contracts, though, so maybe that one's not even a good representation of it.
The insane Kawhi stat that I was actually looking at today, he has finished one playoff series in his entire Clippers career, and it was that year they shit the bed against the Nuggets in the second round in the bubble, the LeMickey title.
The 3-1 lead?
Yeah. Where they blew 3-1.
The LeMickey ring.
But I gotta say, it's so funny that you talked about a couple of things. One, that you talked about 5 years ago, kind of just as the timeline for this, because that 2019, if you want to talk about the summer, that was an insane summer in the NBA. I feel like since we've been sports fans, the two NBA summers that really changed the league, I would say, obviously, was that 2010 summer with LeBron. Going to Miami, or LeBron and Bosh going down to Miami, Amari going to the Knicks, Boozer going to the Bulls. Those are kind of some of the highlight moves. And then
Melo re-signed in New York as well that summer.
No. Melo actually still had a deal. He ended up getting traded to New York that next.
That's what it was.
Trade deadline.
Swirling, stuff
yeah,
like
but I was gonna say that 6 month period. Even if you want to say even take it out to that trade deadline, the league changed significantly in that kind of 6 month period. And the NBA is the exact same. Like you said, Raptors coming off beating the Warriors in the title. KD and Kyrie ended up going to Brooklyn that summer. AD gets traded to the Lakers. The infamous Russ to the Rockets, CP3 to the Thunder trade, which happened, I think actually early September, maybe even late August, because it didn't happen initially. It was closer to the start of the season. And then the one you just talked about, the Kawhi and PG teaming up and going to the Clippers. And I swear we didn't talk about this beforehand, but my first statement kind of had to do with that as well, and that was trading all those picks for PG and Kawhi was worth it. Now, look, to be completely fair, 99%, I would say 29 out of 30 GMs in the NBA would have done that trade. And even after that trade and seeing how bad it's gone, if there was that exact same scenario, obviously not the two guys because their stature isn't quite the same.
Guys,
yeah, and you were like, hey, you have to trade 6 picks plus your best asset, the by far best asset that you have on your team, to then go get two guys who, like you said, one could be considered the best player in the league, and the other one, at worst, is top 15. Where are you going to do this? Still, 29 to 30 GMs right now today will say yes to that. So even with the fail,
you get Giannis
Yeah.
and like Ja Morant on your team just like that by trading picks.
Every
single a free agent pickup of Giannis, and then you can also get Ja Morant. It's we'll do that. Just name your price.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, Ja Morant's not a bad example because he does have kind of the same injury scares that, not quite to the same level that a PG and a Kawhi had to that point. Although I felt like Kawhi's injury history up to that point was a little overblown because really it was just the mysterious, I don't want to play in San Antonio. And then the Raptors were like, hey, you can play whenever you want to. Just pretend like you're injured when you're not playing. So I don't know. But yeah, so the Clippers, Kawhi, and PG, that's a great place for us to start because I think that's kind of been that was the thing of that summer, and it's been the thing that every year since we've been waiting on. Even up to last year, people were like, man, I don't know, Kawhi and PG if they're healthy.
Well,
and
they
look,
were playing really well, and then it was
Kawhi looked awesome during last season. During the regular season.
Also, the Clippers have just become such a joke over the years because when they had Lob City, it was everyone was like, "This might be the year. This might be the year."
People hated them. People hated them though.
They hated them, but analysts and stuff were like, this might be the year that they do this. This might be the year they make the conference finals or the finals or whatever. And that's kind of how it's been with this Clippers team, but the opposite way. It's they're never going to win anything because they're just the same old Clippers, or people they come up and it's the Clippers have a great roster, but until I see something, I'm not going to believe in it. And then last year was the first year in a while that I really saw, en masse, a lot of people that were really knowledgeable about the NBA being okay, this Clippers thing might be real. This Clippers thing might be actually real. They might actually, win the regular season West, and which I assume would mean that it correlates to some playoff success and stuff like that. And then of course it fell apart because it always does because they're the Clippers. But I digress. So what was your so your first one kind of correlated with mine. What was your next kind of idea for those statements that were 100% true 5 years ago, but now it just sounded insane?
So I'll say this, on this podcast, we kind of focus on three main sports: basketball, football, soccer. I kind of broke it down and did one for each of those three. So did my basketball
unintentionally. So.
Nice. I swear we don't compare notes before the podcast. I promise. I'll do my soccer one second. I'll actually do my soccer one second. So we're looking at the summer transfer window. These are all actually this is a transfer-based statement. So summer window just closing, going into the 1920 season. This summer will define the new era of La Liga. I heard that so much. That was a time where I was really getting into the sport.
Summer that Vinny moved?
No, this is each of the big three teams made a huge signing that summer. That was Hazard to Real Madrid, which obviously goes down as an all-timer for one of the worst. Griezmann to Barcelona, another all-timer, one of the worst. And João Felix to Atletico Madrid. All three of those were signed in that same summer.
Which, by the way, me and Chad have had lengthy conversations that João Felix deal does not get anywhere near the amount of credit for being, the single worst move in, the history of... I mean, even with the Barcelona transfers, I still think it ranks up there because... when you start loaning people out, I don't know, the Coutinho thing when they loaned him out and he scored a brace on him in the 8-2 win, the Champions League, that one kind of has to be up there. But the João Felix, it's buying him from a small league, buying a young player, splashing cash that they've never spent before.
Who really didn't have, if you look back on it, didn't have the body of work of like you said.
A hat trick in the Europa League round of 16 or quarterfinal or something, and then
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And then it was oh shoot, it's João Felix. Yeah, I guess he's going to be the best player in the world one day now.
That became the new original smile. So, but so that was to me, and just that. So that was the, hey man, everyone, Real Madrid had just lost Ronaldo. Before that, they were like, hey, Eden Hazard's going to be the guy to kind of carry him through this next period. Obviously, as I said, Griezmann going to Barcelona. Felix is going to be the guy who replaces him, but also brings even more flair, a younger, more, eccentric type of player, I think was kind of the hope. And then Griezmann, it was we've joked about this ad nauseum, but man, Barca finally found their answer down the left. But even though it's someone who's never played on the left in their entire career, but yet they got an answer down the left-hand side. So that was... And look, I'll be honest, Griezmann's goal-scoring record at Barca was not horrible. I think he was something like 35 and 100, which, look, is that amazing? No. Is it worth 120? No. But, I mean, Hazard scored 10, probably less than 10 goals his entire Madrid career. And as you just mentioned, Felix got loaned out twice while he was in the prime of his career. So,
well, I think a lot of these failed transfers, especially that one, or those three, kind of just go into other than the Hazard one, can really just be what really makes a failed transfer is you can see it initially, the square peg in a round hole type of.
Yep, that's the classic. This is not going to work.
It's okay, Atletico Madrid, we need an attacker. I guess we need an attacker to fill Griezmann's shoes. Okay, so what is Griezmann good at? He's great in the air. He's a great creator. He's athletic. He's fast.
Hard-working.
He's a deadly finisher. So what are we going to do? We're going to get a dude who's 19, has never played in the big league, doesn't really like to defend. Oh, and Griezmann also plays defense more than really any other great player in the world at that time.
Yeah.
So now we're going to bring in a guy who doesn't like to defend, who's 19, who's never played in a big league, who's not even really a center forward, and whose best trait is probably his flair ability, which I will freely admit is really, you can see the talent. You can 100% see the talent. But it's when you see those two things, it's what were you going to do there? Barcelona, same thing. Okay, we need someone we need I don't know, maybe a left winger. you could say. Or at least Coutinho is one of the best players in the world, we think, so we can find a role for him. It's like, no, unless you have a role for him, you can't just buy him.
Yeah.
Ousmane Dembele, same thing. It's like, okay, we're going to take the best, most exciting right-wing prospect in the world and put him in a team with Lionel Messi.
He's 2-footed, though. He'll figure it out.
Like, it's just Jack Grealish. We're going to take a guy whose whole game relies on freedom of movement, being able to go wherever he wants, try tricks, this, that, and the other.
And being okay with losing the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to put him in a system where if he loses the ball one time, he's never going to play again. And the only thing that we're really going to use him for is winning fouls, and we're going to still spend $100 million on him. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, no,
which is crazy that PSG are like the gold standard for like what a big transfer is supposed to look like. Like they legitimately needed a left winger, so they brought in Neymar for way too much money, but he at least
fit the mold of what they needed.
Edinson Cavani, he's getting old. We need a new center forward. Let's get the biggest center forward in the world that's also playing in our league. Let's get Mbappe. It's like they've spent huge. It's actually worked out pretty decently, even though they haven't won what they're supposed to win. It's worked out pretty decently. Barca, joke. Real Madrid is spotty, but for the most part, they get it right.
I'd say just everything post Hazard, because honestly, this changed kind of transfers for at least two of these teams. I mean, Barca
deserve more credit for your current success since he showed the blueprint of what not to do with his transfers.
Yeah, he was the last guy, because I think, while Bale obviously I think was a good transfer and one that worked out just because he did end up, I mean, he was good. Like, he was legitimately really good.
He's probably one of the 5 best players in the world at his peak, maybe even top 3 behind.
But towards the end, it just got really ugly, so you could see the momentum of people thinking that was maybe like not that great of a transfer, and then the Hazard one to kind of go on the back of that one. Then it was like, all right, let's change our whole mindset, change the whole signing. It's funny, like probably the most influential signing, obviously, Vinny was signed the summer before Hazard. He was signed the same summer Ronaldo left, where they signed Vinny and Valverde, both from South America. Nobody knew anything about them, probably. But this one was like, oh, man, we got Hazard. He's going to change, I never forget, like, I remember thinking, and this is so stupid, and I deserve no credit for it, but I remember watching him in his first preseason game, and he was wearing the number 50. And I was just like, God, this... Like, I just can't see...
Like it's gonna
like, it's that thing me and you joke about where going into the NFL draft, have we watched every single prospect, every single snap of him? Absolutely not. But if we watch 5 plays of him, I'll be able to just give you an idea of how I feel because I've watched other people, play before. Other prospects that are great prospects. Guys who are great that join their team, and Hazard just looked weird in the 50, and that clearly set the whole thing off as to his, career at Madrid, which was, like I said, awful. Easily the worst of the 3, I would say. So
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's a huge one. So saying that would, positively impact the big 3 clubs in the league at that window, and then obviously not being able to. Now, this is one that hits very, very close to home for me, because when I say this person's name and when I say it in a positive light, you're probably going to do one of these, because I've never thought of this guy in a positive light. And so that's going to be one guy who, when I look back at it, was probably the best English player at the time in 2019, and that would be Raheem Sterling.
Yeah.
His 18-19 season, he had 49 goal involvements in 51 games for City. Okay, this is the year they won the league by 1 point over Liverpool. They won the FA Cup. This is when they won 6-0 against Watford in the FA Cup final. This is the year they got to the EFL Cup final and lost in pens. No, they won in pens. This is the one they won in pens in the EFL Cup. Okay, because this is when people were, talking. I mean, they literally won a domestic treble.
And had that crazy Champions League game against Tottenham.
against Spurs. This is when they had the game against Spurs where the goal got called back. I mean, that was Raheem Sterling's goal, no? That got called offside. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to count that as 50 goal involvements. I'm just kidding. But,
all right, Ronaldo.
Exactly. So insane season for City, and he's probably the most prolific goal involver that they have. With goals, assists, pacing behind. Really, he's the only one that's really providing that. Leroy Sané's still kind of getting onto the scene at this point. Mm-hmm. And then also in England, in 9 games in 2019, he has 8 goals, 9 assists, which is kind of infallible. I mean, and I think he was one of 2 English players in the team of the season. The other one was Trent, and I just don't think that Trent was better than him at that point. One PFA Young Player of the Year, and also won the Football Writers Association Player of the Year.
Player of the Year, I remember that. I do remember that.
So he didn't actually win the official Premier League Player of the Year, but
he was in the conversation.
Correct. And so in that all coming together at that time in his career, pretty insane. Again, considering the lack of credit that I give him, he was 24.
So right at the prime of his career.
Right as he's getting into the years where it's he is prime guy. Okay. Yeah. And again, after saying all that, what did he do in this past European Championships this past summer? I actually heard there was a watch party. Okay. It was Rashford, Sancho, and Raheem Sterling all got together and watched the Euros together. No, but
was it at Ben White's house?
It wasn't at Ben White's house because there's no way in hell he spent any time in England over the summer. So
fair enough. Fair enough.
So, but it was just insane to me, looking back, and because I was always a Raheem Sterling hater. I really haven't liked City for the entire time they've been really, really good.
Are you still a Raheem Sterling hater, or where are we at right now with it?
So this is where this segment kind of fell apart. Okay, so I wrote all this down about a week ago. Now I think I'm back. I'm just kidding. I don't think he's going to be great for us, but if he can get 10 goal involvements in the league for us, then it's a good signing. We're covering I think 100,000 pounds of his 100,000 pounds a week of his 325,000 a week wage
salary,
and he's going to play cup games, EFL Cup. Maybe some of the weaker Champions League teams he'll start against, and then maybe if we're playing Southampton at home, he'll start something like that. But
he'll score a decent brace against Ipswich at home, and people will be like, "Huh, Raheem Sterling, what a quality signing!"
It won't even be decent. Made the difference. The same goals he used to score for City. He's going to arrive at the
trip over the ball.
Yeah, and then same thing. He's going to slip on it, and then it's going to go in. And then the next one, someone's going to try and clear it. It's going to literally explode one of his testicles and then fly in the back of the net. And it's oh man, he was at the right place at the right time. You can't coach that.
That's experience. That's why Arteta got him.
Again, Raheem Sterling. I mean, he was getting dropped by the worst Chelsea team of the century. For
certainly in the last decade. Certainly in the last decade,
or whatever his name is, players like that are getting into the just getting onto the bench before him, much less actually starting and playing. And so not getting in the England team at all, and so seeing how far the drop off has been since that 2019 season, where even I had to look up and eventually be Raheem Sterling's probably one of the at least 5 best players in the Premier League, which is really sucks to say because I don't, again, this is still me back in 2019. I was I don't think he can play. I don't think he's good, but you can't fault his output. You just can't. Yeah. And I think this is what a lot of people now think about my boy Bukayo Saka. They're like, oh well, he can't play, but he gets goals and assists, so I guess I have to rate him. And be that as it may. Hopefully we can have this kind of conversation about Bukayo Saka because that means that we will have won a domestic treble and he scored 50 goals for Arsenal in the season. So hopefully we can have a very similar conversation like this about him in 10 years.
Okay, yeah, let's hope we're still doing. We'll still be doing this in 10 years. I can't promise anyone will be listening in 10 years, but actually I think we'll just be hitting our peak in 10 years. So I'll be late 30s by that point. We'll be good. Yeah, I know, right? All right, so hit me with your third one. I guess this will be your football one since we already hit soccer and basketball.
Just very, very simple, straight to the point. Kyler Murray, franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I was looking back at that draft. It's crazy. I'll reel off the top 7. Kyler Murray, Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, Cleveland Farrell, Devin White, Daniel Jones, ouch, and then Josh Allen, the edge rusher, not the quarterback. So that's the only thing. That's the only thing that maybe kind of saves the Kyler Murray thing is like there was no
one else to pick anyway.
Yeah, at the quarterback position. I mean, obviously, Look, we know Bosa is insane. Josh Allen is really good. All those defensive guys, except Cleveland Farrell, who we all knew was a bust the second he was drafted, are all pretty good. But yeah, the two quarterbacks.
Clemson, or am I losing my mind?
Yep, Clemson. I knew immediately. We talked about knowing when a guy's a bust. I knew he was I thought he wasn't going to be that great. And then on the draft telecast, I remember they said, the first thing they said about him was, "Man, this dude's great in the locker room." And I was like, "Yep, it's confirmed." It's confirmed. That was the same thing as the Solomon Thomas when he went third to the 49ers a few years back. So, but let's get back to Kyler Murray.
Even if we just go through the quarterbacks that were taken in this draft, I mean, I haven't even heard of some of these guys. Like, it was Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, Will Grier, Ryan Finley, Jarrett Stidham, who I don't know if you guys pay attention too much, but he is a starting quarterback in this league. Even though he's been in it for about 5-6 years now, and no one's given him a starting job, but he is a starting quarterback in this league. That's what he says. Easton Stick, Clayton Thorson, Minshew.
This is the Minshew year.
And then, the best quarterback that Penn State's ever produced, maybe?
Hackenberg?
Trace McSorley?
Oh, hey, he's the only one that's got a TikTok song about him, so I think that puts him in the conversation.
So as Chad was saying, like, it's not like indefensible if you're like, we really need a quarterback, but there's not really anyone to pick. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, not even the fault of the Cardinals. Like, the hype machine was there. Like, it was like he just won the Heisman. He was a part of the Oklahoma team, which continued to be prolific even after he left. Which honestly is more of a red flag than anything. I feel like if there's a really good quarterback before you in a system and a really good quarterback after you in a system, it's not like, oh man, they're a great developer. It's like, oh well,
everyone that's
system,
under center.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's crazy to say that of those 3 quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts has had the best NFL career so far. Because it went Baker, then Kyler, then Jalen Hurts. And then it went to your boy, Spencer Rattler, and I don't know if that has panned out as well. But just looking back and just seeing like the guys that were like, this is the guy, and everyone knew he was going to be the number 1 pick. And obviously you had the thing where it's like, I could choose baseball or I could choose football, and he was so like knowledgeable that he was going to be the number 1 pick and he was going to make all this money that it became a non-decision for him. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go play football, and things like injuries and the notorious film study stuff and just general lack of willingness to kind of progress as a quarterback has kind of held him back from having really any type of career. He'll never tell you this, but Chad, like 2-3 years ago, was 100% riding the Kyler Murray hype train. So go on.
What do you mean 2-3 years ago? I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm the only one on now. I don't even have to charge people to get on. That's the great part about it. I'm just riding around the city looking for people, and it's like, no one else is there. Complete side note, and then we'll get back to it. Could you imagine being the Oakland Athletics, and it's like, hey, dude, the guy who we picked 8th in the entire MLB draft, and we're never going to get one at-bat out of him. Like, and that happens in baseball way more than you really realize, which is, like, guy will be, like, drafted first round. Yeah.
Interesting connection. We know somebody, actually, who was dating at the time the first overall pick. Okay.
Oh shit! Yeah.
The first overall pick in the Major League Draft, and he never threw a single pitch in Major League Baseball. Mark Appel. He went to Stanford, and so I mean, again, it's the only reason I don't think it's as bad from the Athletics is because one, they're the Athletics, so who cares?
No one cares.
But number two, it's like, I mean, this isn't like a thing that's unreasonable. I think there was a top 10 pick a couple of years ago that not only didn't sign his contract and went to college, actually went over to play in the Japanese NPB and signed a contract there instead of going to the major league team that drafted him. So, I mean, it's not like unheard of that something like that would happen. So that's, and also like, I don't really see the career arc for a 5'9" position player in Major League Baseball.
Mookie Betts, what are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. You can point at like two people. It's like Mookie Betts and Jose Altuve, and so kind of like what we were talking
pretty
about
good
before,
guys.
Transfers. Like that's not exactly the template for success. Is like, oh, well, this guy's super athletic, even though he's small and undersized and this, that, and the other. But who cares? What's your last one?
Yeah, real quick, it's funny. I kind of did mine. I started off looking at the 19 NFL draft to see if there was an angle I was looking at, but it ended up being that 2020 draft was the one that really solidified it. That was Joe Burrow, Tua, and Herbert were the first round guys, or like the big first three. Okay. And if everyone at that time was saying Tua is the quarterback prospect that's going to change your franchise, and to think. I mean, look, I don't hate Tua. I think he's fine. But if you are talking about those three, Burrow, Herbert, Tua, he's unequivocally third in that list. So, or out of those three guys. So, just the how quickly it went from, going into his junior year at Bama, coming off of had the freshman year where he came in through the touchdown, won the championship against Georgia. Sophomore year is awesome. Everyone's like, man, first pick. Can we give this guy 2 Heismans? That's how good we think he is. And then all of a sudden he ends up falling to 5. And people were still like, nah, well, that's a steal. That's a steal. I knew people who were even saying like, hey, he can still go 1. Because Burrow, I still will maintain like Burrow was nowhere near a known 100% prospect, for the number one. When we're talking about the number 1 pick, he had one good year as a 5th-year senior at LSU. So, it was reasonable to think that there was some debate. But then the Tua Herbert thing, everyone was Tua. There's only one guy in America who was Team Herbert, and it's a good thing you're brothers with him because he's able to sit down and do this podcast. So. I'm just saying, man, there was no Tua. Like, everyone loved Tua at the time. And now it's just so funny because I feel like 90% of people kind of hate Tua at this point. So it's swung, like, completely the other way.
I don't understand how he's gotten that reputation as, like, someone who's like, oh, this guy. I don't even know what, like, the criticisms of him are. Like, he's a good NFL quarterback. Like, he can clearly win 12 games with them. It's not like he's not freaking Joe Montana, but at the same time, right. He's not like freaking, like, I don't even know, Drew Henson.
Yeah, he's not Blake Bortles, So.
Yeah, he's never played in the AFC Championship game.
That's true. But yeah, so crazy times back in 2019. This is fun. I think we should kind of pick other random years moving forward and just kind of explore, like, hey, what was the sports landscape like, around this time?
That's an interesting thing about kind of looking back. Whenever I get on my Wikipedia deep dives and I'll like be scrolling through and it's like, oh, college football in 2006, and it's like, wait,
Pitt?
Who was playing in the SEC championship game? Wait, West Virginia was in what conference and had what record with who?
Oh yeah,
as quarterback? Like, what happened?
Oh yeah. Exactly.
So all that stuff is always really interesting to me. So hopefully we can, like you said, do something similar to this. Looking back at kind of some of our sports history, especially the things that we grew up seeing that now even kind of color our perception of things. I mean, I'm still convinced every year that I see them play, I'm like, yeah, Rutgers is a pretty good team. Because when we were younger, they had a pretty decent team one year, and now in my head, Rutgers is just a pretty decent football team, even though they never are. So. Moving on to our next segment, we have the QB stock game. Chad, this is sort of something you pitched to me, so why don't you give us sort of what we're going to be doing with it and how we're going to kind of come back to it throughout the NFL season.
Yeah, so we kind of realized, like, hey, guys, NFL is kicking off on Thursday. We haven't really done a whole ton of football stuff. And, like, that's because we're more, I just don't want to blow smoke. You know, I don't think either one of us are exactly where we say we want to be when it comes to football prep and know every single guy. So we're going to kind of be updating that throughout the season, as we've done with soccer over the past couple weeks. But we wanted to do something to get into the season, get people excited about it, and really kind of give our opinions on some guys. And as you know, NFL, the prime position is always going to be quarterback. That's the position that makes or breaks franchises. And as we just talked about with the draft guys and, you know, how people were feeling about that position. So we're going to be doing a stock game. And this is straight up, this is a blatant ripoff from the Ryan Russillo podcast, but I feel like we're going to be doing a better version of it because I don't think they kept up with theirs as well. Love the pod, but, you know, just some minor criticism. So we're going to be looking at each picking 4 quarterbacks here at the start of the season. You know, kind of as they're not necessarily saying we think these are going to be the 4 best quarterbacks, but looking at them as a stock. So I did the work, or I did a spreadsheet, emailed it to Ethan. The stock price, and the way I determined that is going to be QBR from last season multiplied by the team wins from last year divided by losses. So when you actually do that math, it comes up like all the numbers that we have for the guys, they're all reasonable stock prices, right? Like you got some ones that are super high, over 200, and you got a couple guys that are somehow in single digits, which I think is hilarious. So shout out Daniel Jones and Bryce Young. So just like that, you're looking for value, not necessarily who the best guys are. We're going to pick 4. We're going to track it throughout the season. Not exactly 100% sure how we're going to be doing it, but you know, there are going to be opportunities to sell guys, maybe swap guys, all this other stuff. And the goal of the game is who can get the most growth, you know, out of their stocks over the course of the season. So who's going to have the highest rate of return? So after I just explained it poorly for a minute, Ethan, I want you to have the first pick.
Are you sure you don't want to bring back a old in the huddle tradition of doing some live Rochambeau?
Ooh, I mean we can. I just hope the audio delay or the video delay isn't kicking in. So let's go.
We'll just do it one out of 1. All right.
All right.
All right.
All right. I'm first. I'm sure
that was an exciting watch. So. So I'm glad we gave that to the people.
Live Rochambeau on the pod. What could be better? All right. With the first pick, you know, before I give out who it is, we both kind of broke it down. I did my blue chip stocks, which are kind of like my top guys. You know, the ones who I think no doubt are going to have the most growth. Got some red chip stocks right after that. You know, some guys that are going to be probably some growth, you know, maybe a little bit more wild cardy. And then I've got a group of 4 guys that are just absolute no chance, either because I just don't think they're good or because their stock price is too high. You know, if you're playing for a team that had a really good win-loss record last year, all of a sudden your stock price can be super inflated, as we talked about with Joe Flacco, who is somehow fourth on this entire list, even though he only started 5 games and had a QBR of 48. So with my very first pick, I'm actually changing this live on the pod because I had a guy and then I listened to a podcast and I'm not as comfortable having that guy as the first pick. So with my first pick, I'm going to be taking Aaron Rodgers.
Damn.
Aaron Rodgers.
I really was like, I was looking hard at the spreadsheet you sent, and I was looking for value, and I was like, oh shoot, absolutely. Aaron Rodgers was 28.91 last year for his stock, and just for reference, the highest number is 280. So obviously, that's a huge, show for growth. Variance. I mean, he had a 41.3 QBR, I guess technically, and his team went 7-10, and so it's like, even if they just have a winning record and he's a decent quarterback, like that amount of growth is going to be outrageous. So that actually blows.
And that Rodgers number for QBR is from 2 seasons ago. So that's actually a good point. I guess I didn't explain it all the way. So for rookies, I did also put their QBR from last season, their college season, but the way to make it more fair, just because college QBR is a bit inflated, we multiplied it by the team that they got drafted by, their win-loss record and all that stuff was the multiplier and divider. So made the stock prices a little more realistic.
Drake May had a 78.8 QBR in college, which is pretty damn good. But then his team went 4-13, which is why they were able to get him. And so he still ranks near the bottom of the list for overall stock because his team sucked, but he had a good college season. So again, for Chad, making it a good balancing point. Damn, I really wanted Rodgers. So let's go on to my first pick.
He was the Apple stock of this exercise.
So this was the guy that was number 2 on my board anyway. Ooh. So getting him second anyway is not going
good value.
Good value because I think that his team record is going to improve, and then also I think his QBR wasn't what he projects out to or what he's going to be.
I know who you're taking.
This is someone that's been mentioned already, actually, on this podcast, and that would of course be Justin Herbert. I have a very weird relationship with Justin Herbert because I've now, in my older age, more of a guy that has older, type of opinions. Like, oh, well, he doesn't win, so he must not be that good. Oh, well, you can't do this, so he might not be that guy. But it's something about Herbert is just I just will continue to believe until he shows me that he's terrible.
He's your Chris Paul.
You could go 9-8 for the next 10 years, and I'll be sitting here banging the table when he's 35, being I'm telling you what, if a team gives him a chance that has a good roster, Justin Herbert could win the Super Bowl. All this stuff, and so last year he went in the games he played, they went 5-8, and he had a 64 QBR, which is just I don't think that Justin Herbert. And again, like Chad said, this is really about looking for growth. All right, and then Justin Herbert was 9th worst.
Yeah.
Or no, 10th worst.
10th worst.
Yeah, 10th worst. So bottom quarter of the NFL. And I just think that there's literally no way that he's even bottom half of the NFL for this upcoming season. Of course, health impending or health, dependent. But I just think there's no way that he's even a bottom half quarterback. So if you can take a stock from bottom quarter to top half, I think that that's already, great value. And I really, really like Justin Herbert. So, Chad, back on to you. Unless you want to do a snake draft with 2 guys.
We can, actually. I mean, okay.
You won the first pick, so we deserve to just
okay.
alternate.
Fair enough. No, I tell you, the Herbert model that you just talked about what his career arc is of 9-8, but everyone's still going to love him at the end of his career. That, I feel like, is just the Chargers' legacy with their last 2 quarterbacks between Rivers and Herbert, where it's you might win. Will win less than 5 career playoff games, but people will somehow trick themselves into putting them into the all-time conversations at the position. So
not people, and me.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say, and then they'll make the argument, and you'll be like, fair argument, all that stuff.
If you make an argument about them in a vacuum, it's going to sound insane. You're going to say the counting stats, the amount of touchdowns, and the amount of even division championships. The amount of times they won the division. It's man, this guy must have been one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And then you get into the part where it's well, also the entire time he ranked 6th in the NFL for all those things. Yeah. And he never won any meaningful playoff game, and the team just overall was never considered one of the best in the NFL. It's oh, okay, well, nice.
I will say, just quickly, I am high on Herbert as well. They got the new coach coming in, obviously, with Harbaugh, who I think, it honestly has a staggering. I think he's won 80% of his games as an NFL head coach, which is top 5 all time. So he obviously knows how to coach an NFL team, improve the offensive line significantly, which I think will be huge for Herbert. Don't necessarily have the same weapons though. They got DJ Chark really as their number 1 guy, kind of. So I'm not gonna be super thrilled about who he's throwing to, but I think with the emphasis on protecting him, the emphasis on, because the thing with Herbert is for the last 2-3 years, it just felt like they were like, all right, we'll go 4 wide, 1 running back, and it's like, all right, Herbert, just find a guy and make a play. Like, now all of a sudden, they have a real structure, they have a running game. There's not going to be as much on his plate, so that could actually see his QBR, improve, even if you're saying the traditional counting stats aren't going to be as high. So that's why I prefer QBR to any like traditional stat. But go ahead.
Yeah, and he also the one thing that does worry me a bit about him being picked or being with Harbaugh this year is that Harbaugh's a coach that really really loves to just put your head down, nose to nose. We're going to run the ball for 5 yards of carry, and that's how we're going to win football games. We're going to get we're going to have a 14-6 lead at halftime, and then you're only going to get 3 more possessions for the rest of the game. So good luck, like that kind of a thing. And so it's like, I don't think my biggest fear is that he tries to bring that too much into the modern NFL, which I don't even think is a way to win really as much anymore. And he tries to be like you said, he's like, hey, I have an 80% win record. I've done all this. I've been to a Super Bowl. I've done this, that, and the other. And so I'm just going to be hard-headed and just keep trying to run my system until I know for a fact it doesn't work, even if it takes 2-3 years. And then Herbert kind of gets caught in the crossfire of that, not being able to throw as many touchdowns, not being able to throw as many yards, and honestly maybe not even being able to win as many games as they could if they were able to spread it out for a guy as talented as Herbert. So that being said, me and Chad both obviously very much in on the first 2 quarterbacks picked. Who do you have next?
I'm going Burrow. Another guy who's kind of in that comeback.
Third on my board.
Hey man, I offered you the snake draft. Another one of the guys, kind of like that Herbert, right? Where he's a really good quarterback. Had a down year with injuries. Burrow was actually 5-5, had a 51 QBR. So, kind of the theme. This isn't rocket science at this point, right? We've explained the format, the model. You're looking for a guy who maybe had a slightly down year and is now coming back. He's still got Jamar Chase. Hopefully, he'll be playing in week 1. I know the contract situation stuff is always weird with the holdouts, right? It's like how deep into the season is the holdout going to last? But let's hope he's on the field for week 1. T. Higgins is still there, who is still very, very good at football. And they have the Mike Gesicki addition as the pass-catching tight end. I think it's going to hurt him in the offensive line department, obviously. We've talked about everyone knows the Bengals struggles on offensive line under the Burrow era. But as a pass-catching tight end, as a vertical tight end over the middle of the field, I think Gesicki is one of the best guys at that position. So he's gonna be able to provide a true receiving threat for them at the tight end spot, which they had with God, what's the guy? They had a tight end a couple years ago. I don't even remember who it was. But they haven't had one to the pass-catching level of Gesicki. So I think that could be a huge piece of it. And they're going to be relying on Burrow to throw the hell out of the ball because right now Zach Moss is their starting running back. So it's like they're punting on the run game entirely. So a lot on his shoulders.
Is a good point about the running back situation because I saw the Chargers went into the mortuary in Baltimore. And they were like, hey, are you about to cremate these bodies of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards? And they're like, no, not yet. And they're like, okay, cool, we'll be right back with 2 stretchers. And so they took them over to the Chargers.
But at least they have a decent offensive line. But go ahead. Let's keep it going.
My next pick, okay, so Chad talked about sort of his categories, all right, of what it is. And again, what the game is. It's about stocks improving in value, okay? And I looked at this stock, and to me, this is my penny stock pick. I'm
so excited.
There's literally no way in hell that this dude could actually do worse or have a worse stock value price than he did last year. So, Chad, who am I picking?
It's got to be Bryce Young, I feel like.
Bryce Young, yes.
Yeah.
The second worst. Probably I think the second worst QBR of people that qualified. Will Levis is only like he's literally right there.
Yeah.
So and then obviously the 2-14 record in games that he started, obviously not great. But I mean, Bryce Young was actually so bad last year. Chad put different colors coordinated to the different stock prices. His is white because it was so much of an outlier that it wasn't even worth assigning a value to, I guess.
Yeah. No, he's literally last of all these guys available. He's the lowest of all of them.
Correct. So, I mean, we got people that won one game that he's below. We got people that, had historically bad seasons that he's below and things like that. And people that are, known as, the joke quarterbacks in the NFL, he's below them. All that stuff. And so...
I mean, he's below Daniel Jones. You don't have to say anything else. You don't have to say anything else. It was behind Daniel Jones. He is the lowest value quarterback in the entire NFL, and he's still going to be starting next year. So it's just well, I mean, shoot, even if they win one extra game and he improves by 3% on his QBR, that's still a net gain. So I had to pick Bryce Young just simply for the fact that I feel like I literally can't lose. Yeah. Because if he has a stock price of 0, I mean, at that point, it's just I couldn't really do anything more. So Bryce Young, yes, is going to be my penny stock, and hopefully I get a 50% commission on it, like Belfort,
Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah.
There you go. I got to admit, Bryce Young was on my board. He was on my board, not in my first tier. He was more in my second tier of guys, so I'm not mad at that pick. You talked about the flyer, taking a flyer on a guy who, and we actually already talked about this guy earlier in the episode and my predilection towards him. So I'm going to go ahead and, since we're firing off the penny stocks, I'm going to go ahead and take Kyler Murray. I'm making that pick.
Wow, really?
I'm making that pick. Yeah,
he wasn't on my board.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't on a lot of. He wasn't on a lot of people's. I actually think I might have shot my wad early. I might have been able to get him with my last pick, probably, from the sounds of it. So he was 3-5 last year. This is actually strictly 90% of this pick is because I really just love their coaching staff. I love Jonathan Gannon, their head coach. I thought he did a really good job with the horrible franchise last year. I mean, people were talking about people. No, hopefully not. Although he might be the backup quarterback if Kyler Murray ends up missing any more time. I think the Marvin Harrison Jr. addition is going to end up being a positive for him. I know he's a rookie, but the last 5 years especially, we've seen a lot of success with rookie wide receivers who are going to a team that has a quarterback that can pass. Kyler Murray can definitely throw the ball. He can create plays when, from time to time. I'm not going to sit here and talk like he's a top 10 guy at the position. I think they can be a little bit better than people maybe are thinking. He was 3-5 as a starter last year, which actually felt high. So if they can get to 7-10, something along those lines, I feel like Kyler can end up having a decent number, and the stock price can improve a little bit. So that's why I took him.
Kyler. Well, they basically have to believe in him at this point because obviously the contract, but also, Can you tell me who their current listed backup quarterback is?
It's Clayton Tune. I actually was just looking at the depth chart a couple minutes before we started recording, and I was like, God, he's the only other quarterback.
One of the real, this is the term I use a lot, one of the kisses of death for, an NFL quarterback is, if they bring in, a really experienced guy or a guy that started a lot of games to be your backup, it's you really have, 3 more games to stake your claim as a starting quarterback for this franchise, or it's going to be, Minshew time.
Soon as someone brings in Joe Flacco or Sam Darnold to be your backup, it's shit, the seat's medium warm.
Exactly. So we got so far, Chad went Rodgers. I followed that up with Herbert. Chad went Burrow. I go Bryce Young. Chad goes Kyler. And then let me just double check my numbers real quick. I'm going to go with, here he is, with Jordan Love.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Jordan Love.
Wow.
I like Jordan Love because I watched him single-handed. I firsthand saw what he can do in a big game, and maybe not even a play for him getting a ton more wins because they were 9-8 last year in games that he played. But even if they go 10-7 or 11-6, that's still a market improvement. And then I just think that he's going to have a better QBR. He was 62.1 last year, which is about on par with guys like Geno Smith, Gardner Minshew, and just under what Kirk Cousins had 2 years ago, I assume, for this list. So just assuming that he can be Kirk Cousins with a team that's going to win 1 or 2 more games, I feel pretty good about my pick, especially because a lot of those playmakers for Green Bay are a bit on the younger side. So seeing that if they can make that next step, I'm really excited for that, for him and for that team. Also, that division is kind of going to be a bit more of a gauntlet this year, but still, I think that when they play outside of the conference, I mean that's going to be, or outside of the division, that's still going to be a lot of wins. I don't know exactly who they play this year. I should have probably looked that up. What division they play, outside of the division, but it's one of those things where it's like, again, just saying, do I think he can improve both as a team and as a player? I definitely do. And I think he's going to take that next step this year. So Jordan Love would be my next pick. So each of us have 1 pick left, and I have 3 guys left on my board. So I'm interested to see what the play is next. Chad, why don't you go ahead and round off your last pick?
I will, just to help you give you an assist on that Jordan Love. They play the AFC South this year, which is notoriously the worst division in football. So
I heard rumblings that the 25 wins out of the division were just going to be about what we're looking at between the 4 teams.
Yeah, well, Tennessee's not going to be contributing much to that, so that could be possible. My 4th pick, actually, ironically enough, I'm going to that division. I'm going straight there, and I'm hitting you with Trevor Lawrence. I am. Yeah, I know. I feel like we've been. Look, like we talked about, this isn't rocket science. There's really only, there's a 37-man list just because some teams have maybe multiple guys who end up starting for them and all this stuff. There are probably like 20 of them, 15 to 20 of them you could kind of eliminate automatically, whether they're too high or you just straight up think they suck and they're wherever and you just don't want to back them. I'm picking Trevor Lawrence. He had a really down year. They were 8-3 at one point last year before losing 5 in a row to end the season, or 6 in a row, I think, to end the season, which was just weird. And now I think, it's funny, almost how we felt about Jacksonville going into last season, I think it's kind of how people are feeling about Houston now going into this season. Now, I think Stroud you would probably have higher than what they had, or than what people had Lawrence 2 years ago. But still, I think this could be maybe a year where you actually see a slight regression from Houston. Then the opportunity opens up for someone to win that division. I think Indy is too young. I think Richardson isn't ready yet. I could see Trevor Lawrence stepping back in, getting to 10 wins, really improving his play this year as well with the contract extension. So I'm going Trevor Lawrence as my 4th pick, and it sounds like I stole him from right under your nose.
Definitely stole him. Just to give, again, our listeners some context, some of the guys that you're not going to hear, and you might be like, why would that guy not get picked? Guys like Lamar, who was the highest QB stock price last year, but his team went 13-3. It's very hard to improve on that. And he has 64.7 QBR, which was one of the top.
I think it was top 10. It was definitely top 10.
I think he was top 5 of the guys that played in the NFL last year. So none of the college guys.
Yeah.
So, people like that, people like Brock Purdy, who had a 72.8 QBR, which it looks like was the highest of all the NFL guys from last year, and he went 12-4. And it's just hard to improve on things like that. And so that's when it kind of gets difficult to be like, how can I find a guy that can improve but also still, be somewhat of a safe pick? I kind of flirted a little bit with going another penny stock, depending on how the draft was going to go. I was thinking Daniel Jones again, because again, 36.3 QBR with a 1-5 record. It's just like, how can you not do at least
slightly, even if you just win one more game?
Even if you just do the same and just win 1 or 2 more games, like maybe it could end up being worth it. But I'm still live kind of struggling. I'm trying to convince myself that maybe Pat Mahomes could have way better than a 63.1 QBR and win 1 or 2 more games.
Yep. Both of which I think are possible. He was in consideration for me for sure.
Seeing guys like Kirk Cousins, who's 4-4 in this, in this spreadsheet with a 63.2. So even if he's the same, it goes like 10-7, something like that.
Weaker division, much weaker division he's playing in.
But after all that,
man,
I'm gonna have to go Pat Mahomes. I'll hate myself. I'll hate myself if he's like 13-1, 14 weeks into the or whatever, 15 weeks into the season. I'll just really hate myself if I didn't pick him. And he's like the runaway MVP, which obviously is the best player in the league. I have to bet that it's not even really a bet. I just have to think that Patrick Mahomes is going to be
the best.
Another great version of Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So I don't really feel like that's as much of a risk. Value-wise, it kind of is because it's not great value. But just as far as what we've been doing a lot with the game, it doesn't really fall into that line. But I'm still going to always back Pat Mahomes to be great, which I'm going to continue to feel great about. So again, recapping our teams for the season. Okay, again, we're going to do some interesting things in it. Maybe find a way to pick up players or drop players or whatever. But for right now, what we have is Rodgers, Burrow, Kyler, and T. Law for Team Chad, and then we got Herbert, Bryce Young, Jordan Love, and Pat Mahomes for Team Ethan. I really think that's a good mix of guys, penny stock guys, and really good players, and also guys that just you feel like they're going to have a better year than last year. Was there anything you wanted to say? It looked like you tried to get a point in just there before we wrap up this segment.
No, it's just interesting that you went with the pick because and talked about kind of the strategy in the bottom 10 of guys. Of the bottom 10 stocks for these guys, 4 of the 10 guys were taken. Which you may think, man, that sounds crazy. Each of us taken 2 of them, actually. Which you may think, man, that sounds crazy. But, we're talking about getting the growth. And then when you look at the top 10 guys, actually Mahomes, who is 10th, was the only one in the top 10 who was taken. So, and I kind of agree with you. Look, if Mahomes is sitting at 10th at a 105 and Lamar is number 1 at 280, there's room for growth in Mahomes. There's 100% room for growth in what his, performance could be from that year. I like a lot of the additions that a lot of the things that they've done on offense, actually, to continue to improve that team. Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice is looking like he's not going to get suspended, basically. Hollywood Brown getting at it. I know he's good for 2 drops a game, but that's better than the 4 that Kadarius Toney was giving you. So, small steps. And they ended up looking like they got a tackle because they had some of the worst tackle play in the entire NFL last season. So,
again, hopefully this is something that we keep up with and is always kind of in the back of our minds throughout the season.
We're keeping up with it, no doubt. We're keeping up with it. I put in some good work.
And this is kind of our own version on the podcast of having a little fantasy type of thing. While not just saying, hey, here's who you should pick in fantasy, because I know there's 1,000 other content creators out there that know way more than us that are going to give you advice on that. So our last segment of the week, this is something, I kind of wrote this document up, with these topics. Me and Chad kind of collaborated on it, around Tuesday, Wednesday-ish time. So this is before Man United played Liverpool and
the drubbing,
the 3-0 at Old Trafford. But I was like, let's see what a combined 11 would look like, because I'm really fascinated by Man United because I really don't want to come across as a Man United hater, because I just really want to be a
You're doing a hell of a job of that.
Every club other than Arsenal, I try to look at what is the objective reality. I will clearly hold my hands up and say when it comes to Arsenal, I probably think things that aren't true. I probably believe players are better. So maybe sometimes even believe players are worse. But I feel like that happens with everyone's fandom.
Absolutely.
But I really think, for Man United, when I talked about them in the preseason, I think I projected them to finish 7th or something like that, 6th or 7th. And, a lot of these predictions I saw, were like, oh, they're definitely going to finish top 4 now. They're definitely, ready to do this and that. And for me, I'm just like, if you look at their actual team compared to other teams in the league that are going to be qualifying for those spots, qualify for those spots, I just can't see a world where their team is better. That's why I kind of wanted to do this, because Liverpool is probably, or is nailed on one of the three best clubs in the Premier League for this upcoming season. So it's like, how does the Man United 11 stack up to the Liverpool 11? And I didn't even watch the game yesterday. I didn't get to. I was coaching, so none of that really plays any part in my mind. But
I didn't get to watch it either. I was having a great brunch with Steve Larson.
Oh, I like brunch. So
not more than coaching, apparently.
So let's go. Like, I guess I set us up in a 4-3-3, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want it to be a team that makes sense, but not like to an insane amount where it's like, well, we don't have a progressor, a ball progressor. That, we don't have. Well, we have a fullback that likes to get up and down the flank, but we don't have a winger that likes to cut in. Like, not stuff like that intricate, but like, I don't want us putting like, this would never happen, but if it was like, oh, we're gonna put Griezmann, Suarez, and Messi on the field.
You didn't want a situation where the midfield three was Bruno Fernandes, Dominic Szoboszlai, and another number 10, or something like that. You didn't want
something weird like that.
The thing where it's the all-time. The worst is when it's the all-time 11 and someone has a midfield three of Zidane, Maradona, and or Cruyff, like one of those two, and it's like, oh, okay, my bad. Who's doing any defensive work? Granted, no one's taking the ball off those guys, but still, that's at least somewhat trying to pretend.
Guys are taking the ball off Zidane. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. No one's taking wins off of him, though. I'll give him that.
Let's start in the goal. I don't think that this is particularly controversial. Alisson.
You didn't have Tom. You didn't have Tom Heaton.
It was between Alisson and Georgie, their new Georgian signing. But those are. I mean, I think Alisson's the best goalkeeper in the world right now, in my opinion. So I didn't really give that thought at all. Really, it was just, that was the first.
And I actually think Onana was, he was a travesty in the beginning of the season for United last year. I think middle and end of the season, he was actually probably one of their 2 or 3 best players. I think he ended up having the second best post-shot XG in the entire Premier League. So, was called upon an insanely high amount. But like you said, I mean, Alisson is the best keeper in the league. Let's not spend too much time thinking about it.
Right. And so let's give let's go level by level. And we'll, defense, midfield, attack. We don't want to go position by position and argue about that, because maybe it's the same. There's no point really talking about that much. But I'll start. I have one Man United player in this back line, and I don't think it's going to be who you're going to think that it is. So I have, at right back, I have Trent, and then I have Van Dijk, Robertson at left back, and Van Dijk's center back partner is going to be Matthijs de Ligt for me. I think you really convinced me when we talked about that move. I really started to look deeper into him, and I was like, man, this dude Matthijs de Ligt is, like, good. Like, he's actually good.
Exactly.
Like, I kind of gave up on him when he moved to Juve initially. When he moved to Juve, I kind of lost touch with him because it was like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not watching Juve games. Like, I was excited for him as a prospect at Ajax, and so I kind of kept up with him in that way. It was like, I'm not watching, freaking...
Juve Parma,
Genoa, stuff like that. I'm not going to do it. And then when he moved to Bayern, it kind of just felt like here's kind of our not problem, but just a guy we don't really love. Let's dump him off to the next big club, which we've seen, time and time again. People moving from big club to big club.
The Morata career arc
is the king of it. Yeah, exactly. Well, sorry, Morata's the king of it, but Choupo-Moting is like, he's next in line.
The late career guy, yeah.
Correct. But then I was just like, I am not really a huge fan of Lisandro Martinez. I'm really not. I think he's a good player. I just think when we're thinking about, the amount of talent in between these two clubs, I just don't think that he's really that guy. His injury history has been not the best. I just really don't like that part, along with, the size. I know I'm not supposed to mention that, but the size of him I really don't like. The fact that me and Chad have argued about this before off camera. The fact that Nicholas Otamendi was able to start over him in a World Cup winning campaign. at like 140 years old. Was very impressive to me. And I just think Matthias de Ligt is a good center back, and I really hope that he does well for United because I really like him as a player, strong, passionate, a guy that's a real. I mean, he was Ajax captain at like 18 or something like that, club captain at 18, which shows something about who he is as a player. And although a lot of that stuff don't sound like playing attributes, a lot of that stuff in a position like center back really counts when you're trying to build a stable defense. And so that's who I'd have in that back line. Did you have any different players? I doubt you had de Ligt, but go on.
Yeah, I actually didn't. I didn't really consider him just because I'm thinking about him. I was just in the mindset of thinking of him as an unknown in a United shirt. Just because I don't really, like you said, we've seen one. I think he's played like 100 minutes total for them so far. So while I agree with really everything that you said about all his qualities and all that stuff, I do worry about him defending in wide areas. But to be honest, if the defense does what they're supposed to do, I don't think that should be a huge problem for him for most of the season. But I do really like de Ligt as well. Think he's kind of gotten an unfair rap through the end of the Juve era and the Bayern run. People were talking about like, oh, he's starting Dyer over him. Well, if you look at it, de Ligt was injured a lot last season, which is really the big criticism of him is he is known to pick up an injury or two. But anytime he's been fit at Bayern, he's pretty much been first choice. So I'm going to go with my back four. I do have two changes actually from that. I have Trent, Van Dijk. I think those are both locks, probably the two easiest picks. I do have Lisandro Martinez in there. And then at left back, I actually threw you for a wild card. Maybe slight cheat, but I put Malacia in there, even though no one's ever seen him. No, I'm kidding. I put in Diogo Dalot at left back. Mainly because if you look at it, I really don't think Robertson's been that good for the last year and a half-ish. He only started 18 games this past season, and yes, I know you can say, oh, Diogo Dalot's not really a left back. He played a shit ton of left back this past season. Like, I think that's really one of the things about him that is improved his stock, because I think he's been on an upward trajectory really since Ten Hag got there. Like, that's one of the few players where you can be like, hey, he started off here when Ten Hag took over, and now he's actually improved a lot. So I really like what he brings to the side, both in the attack and then as a one-on-one defender. He's not horrible. If you're an awesome attacking fullback, all you need to do is be competent as a defender, and it will more than make up for it. So, and I think that's what Dalot has been able to do. I want to talk just for a second about the center back conversation, though, because I agree with you about Lisandro Martinez. His injury history is really horrible, especially in the Premier League. I think he started I don't even know if he started 30 games total or 35 games total, in the 2 seasons plus these first couple games that he's been there. But you look at the options you have. I mean, I don't think, like I said, I didn't really consider de Ligt at all, and none of the other United guys were really even in the conversation. So then Liverpool, I mean, Konate started 17 games last season. Joe Gomez, 17 starts. Most of those were at left back. Kwanzaa started 13 games in the league, and these are all league starts last season. So there wasn't like that other guy sticking out necessarily from a Liverpool perspective. So I was like, well, shoot, I know Martinez, even if he's not fit all the time, he's been the best performing center back in a United shirt that they have. So let me find a way to shoehorn him in there.
Yeah, that's true. It was either between. Came down to between because of his injury history. It came down between de Ligt and Johnny Evans, but the last second I flipped over to de Ligt. Just, I mean, de Ligt and Robertson are more pedigree plays. I will admit, just like guys that I just know are good players. Like Andy Robertson, I know obviously Tsimikas got a lot of minutes last year because of Robertson's injury woes, but it was just like. I mean, hell, Connor Bradley was like playing left back at times because of the situation there, and so it's like I understand that, but it was just kind of like you were saying, like there wasn't like an outstanding candidate there for me. And actually, like Dalot, I just don't, I was just like I think Robertson's pedigree kind of supersedes that in a way what his performance has been. And then moving into the midfield, I obviously have a midfield 3. I assume we both have Bruno in it.
Yep. I think he was kind of the no-doubt pick of that group.
Correct. Do you have McAllister in your midfield?
I do. I do have him in there. I do have him in there.
I assumed that both of those were basically. Bruno was a lock. McAllister, I just assumed you would have in there.
Yeah.
And then we're going to say our third midfielder here in just 1 second. I have Kobbie Mainoo.
Okay. Yeah, I have him as well. I was really 50-50 between him and Gravenberch because I think Gravenberch has started the season really well. He's played every single minute of all 3 games so far for Liverpool this season. Looks comfortable as that more athletic type of 6. I still just would have loved to see Liverpool sign a true number 6 because I think Gravenberch is best as a more advanced type of midfielder. But he's done a job so far for Arne Slot's side in the first 3 matches. So I was really 50-50 between those two, especially considering like Mainoo doesn't have the most experience, or the biggest sample size of him being that good, even though we know he's very good.
A little bit of background, we didn't want to make this like a form 11 or like just a historical 11 or things like that, because obviously people like Casemiro would be in there, but it was just kind of like, if you had a game, if you had to have a team for like the next month, let's say, like for like you have 4 games this month, create a team from these 2 sides. Who would you want to have in that team? And Kobbie Mainoo has been very impressive. I'm not as high on him as a player right now as maybe other players. I think but you can definitely see the talent. Like what he's able to do at such a young age is out of this world impressive. I think it was Patrick Van Straten on Football Daily a couple of years ago who said, most of the time we like to hype up these young players as players that are good right now. And, most of the time a good young player is about a league average player.
Yeah,
and
right.
I don't even know if Kobbie Mainoo fits into that. He might be slightly better than that, but it's not like Kobbie Mainoo is on the same level as like elite midfielders around the world. He's just
like he's not one of the best midfielders in the Premier League or anything like that.
Correct. He's just a good Premier League player right now. And he's 18, which is beyond impressive. Bruno, obviously, his track record. And Alexis McAllister, I'm just always impressed whenever I watch him. The way he's able to, get stuck into tackles and win them, the way he's able to progress the ball. Obviously, he has a dead eye for goal from long range. His passing ability, a very strange skill. But I love his ability to switch play, both with short and longer passing. It's just he's a really good player, and of course, another Brighton product, so he was gonna be in with the shout there. Now we are moving on to our front 3, which I'm like fascinated by. Real quick,
did you give any thought to Szoboszlai, or like where were you thinking about him?
I did. I think I put McAllister and Bruno in there because I thought those are the 2 best midfielders between the 2 teams. And then I was like, again, I kind of got into like the midfield that made sense kind of thing, and I was like, I think Szoboszlai right now may be a better player than Mainoo. I'm not even 100% sure about that. He may be a better player right now, but it's like
slightly, and Mainoo fits more.
Correct. Yeah, it kind of came down to that, and I thought Mainoo deserved his flowers more than anything for what he's been able to do over the past 9-ish months. I thought he deserved to be in the team.
Fair.
Again, so quickly moving on to this front line, which I'm fascinated by, because I honestly, it could go so many different ways that I don't even. I mean, Salah's in there on the right, but the other 2 slots, no Arne. I really don't know. I really don't know who you're going to put, and I think you, as well as our listeners, are going to kind of be shocked by at least one of my picks. So why don't you give your left winger? We'll go position by position on this one since we only have 2 more.
Okay, so the left winger is probably that was my. I don't even know about my. I don't. For me personally, just how I feel, because like you said, Mo Salah on the right was obvious. I know I'm skipping around, but Mo Salah on the right was an obvious lock. So that one didn't have to think about for more than 2 seconds. My striker choice, actually, to me, was probably more clear than maybe some others would think. And the left was where I was kind of like, I could do a couple of different things. Really, like, even just looking within the same team, you could have done a couple of different things, depending on how you wanted to do it. But I ended up going for Garnacho. And I know...
That's nice.
Nice. And mainly, I'll be honest, the main catalyst for why I had it is I just think, and this might be the wrong time to be mentioning it, I just think Luis Diaz is very overrated as a player. I just do. He's 30 goal contributions in 4,800 minutes in 3.5 years at Liverpool. Like, that's just not good enough. I mean, Garnacho, and these are all in the league numbers. Garnacho had 12 goal involvements in the league last year as a 19-year-old. Like,
yep.
I think
dysfunctional Man United team.
Yeah, and I think he's the one more so than Diaz. You can be, or even Rashford, which I don't think Rashford Garnacho is really even much of a debate anymore. Like, I know who I think is better, 100%, and it's Garnacho. But compared to all these other guys that you could have picked on the left, I think Garnacho is the one that has that wow factor and is the one guy who you can kind of spray the ball to wide in a 1v1, and he can actually go beat a guy and actually create and score a goal. So I don't think anyone else has
Luis
that on
Diaz
that
is like explosion and his athleticism, and like he might even have a little bit more flair than a guy like Garnacho, and so it makes it look like when you watch them play. This is why I kind of don't like it when people do you even watch games? Things like goals and assists are overrated. Do you even watch the games? This is how I think sometimes that can go awry, because it's like, if you just watch, if you watch the games, there are certain people that you watch, like Joao Felix is a perfect example. It's like if you watch him play, he's going to do 4 or 5 things per game that really no one else on the pitch can do. And it's like, man, did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see this flick or this movement or the way he lost his man here? Like, man, that was really, really impressive. But then it's like, at the end of the day, he's a center forward who doesn't score goals. And that's kind of how it is with Luis Diaz. It's like, man, did you see how he jumped up over the right back and just won this header down across the box? And you see how he just ran straight past his right back, or how he did this amazing trick to beat 3 or 4 players. But then it's like, the ball ended up flying out of the stadium when he hit the shot.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, what do I value? I value a guy like Garnacho, a guy that's going to consistently get goals and assists and is always dangerous. He's always making something happen in the final third. It might not be as flashy, it might not be as explosive, but he's so effective. And every single time I watch him play, I'm so impressed by him. And I'm actually really, jealous. I'm hoping that, Uncle Perez or someone like that can get involved with him. Sometimes.
Problem is, we already got every left winger imaginable, so it's like the last thing we need is a fourth guy who wants to play on the left.
Yeah, so I need some big club, some other big club outside of Man United coming in for him and being like, let's get you out of the Premier League so he doesn't have to terrorize Arsenal for the next, 10, 15 years. Lastly, our striker choice. Now, this was a one where, kind of like you, I kind of looked at it and I was like, man, there's a lot of options, there's a lot of this, and I thought about it.
I think we ended up going with the same guy. Just before you even say anything, I think we ended up with the same guy. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, even though I did.
I was just like looking at it, and I was looking at numbers, and I was looking at the amount of shots this guy gets and the amount of goals he actually scored last year, and like in the Premier League, in again a dysfunctional team, and I was like, Rasmus Højlund just has to be the guy for me.
Wow.
Did you not have Rasmus Højlund?
I didn't, but I love that pick. No, fuck no. Sorry, I didn't. No, I had Arne Slot's new number 9, Diogo Jota.
Yeah, it's just Diogo Jota is kind of a.
Is that cheating?
Like, I wouldn't call it cheating, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if I had this team and I had the front line with Diogo Jota in it, I just wouldn't feel great game to game, week to week. Where it's like, Diogo Jota has great performances and he scores goals, he does this, that, and the other, but it's like, he's always due for an injury. He's always, got slightly Leandro Trossard syndrome, where it's like, when he comes off the bench for the last 30 minutes of a game, he's just going to score 2, and it's like, what the hell just happened? And to me, it's just like Rasmus is a guy that I would want leading the line. Someone that's good in build-up, can get in behind, can play in channels. I think he actually ended up scoring like 12 Premier League goals last year with all the criticism and all the people clowning him and stuff like that, which is more than he had scored even to get that £72 million move from Atalanta. So it was like, if that is like the baseline for what he's going to do, and again, I know that's not always how it works with players, where they're just going to be better just because they're a year older or whatever. But if that is the baseline for what we're going to see for Rasmus and United, And again, if we plug him into this team where he's going to have Trent whipping in beautiful balls to him, Bruno finding him in behind, McAllister able to, split the lines into his feet, Garnacho, Salah taking away so much pressure from him. I think, again, if you want to stretch this out to a course of Premier League season, I think that's like 15 to 20 goals for Rasmus Højlund, as well as great work rate, great, okay build-up, but, he does the work for it, getting into the channels, dynamic mover. And I thought, for me, it really came down, funnily enough, to the two United center forwards, him and Xerxes. And I just wasn't really impressed by what Xerxes had to offer. And Darwin, it's like, I actually don't even hate Darwin as a player. I just didn't think that he was right for what we're trying to do with this team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I said fuck no on the Darwin thing, maybe that was a bit much, but I just really think of him as a level below maybe these guys that we're talking about. I mean, there's a reason he really, I don't think, has even played a single minute through these first couple of games this season for Liverpool. It's not that he's a bad player. It's just, But I'm looking at Højlund's numbers. I mean, you might have me reconsidering. He had 15 goals in the Prem and Champions League combined last year. Like,
he was the top goal scorer of the Premier League or Champions League group stage.
Group stage, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So for him to get, 16 goals and assists as a 20-year-old playing for a Premier League side, like, there's definitely a lot to like with him, no doubt. So I'm going to stick with my pick in Jota just because I feel like he's slightly more prolific, and has a little bit more Premier League track record. But Højlund, I'm not mad at. I'm not mad at that at all.
So we never ended up coming to consensus. I don't think we were supposed to, just giving our general teams. But my team ended up being Alisson in the goal with Trent, Van Dijk, De Ligt, and Robertson across the back. In midfield, we have McAllister and Mainu playing behind Bruno. And then on the left, we have Garnacho, on the right Salah, and Rasmus through the middle. Why don't you run us through your team real quick?
Yeah, same goalkeeper, Alisson. Back four, Trent, Van Dijk, Lisandro, and Diogo Dalot. Midfield three, we've got McAllister, Mainu, and Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes, as the Premier League pronunciation guide came out. And then the front three, Garnacho, Salah, and then Diogo Jota leading the line for me.
Yeah, so this is an interesting place for us to leave off. Hopefully you guys are, still listening and, really ready to participate. So just really let us know, what do you guys think about some of the segments that we had today? We're pretty experimental in some of the things that we did today. Combined 11 is kind of, standard stuff. But other than that, I thought we came up with some more unique segments. So let us know what you thought. Do you like, the more traditional things? Do you like we try to range out and do something a little bit more creative like this? And then obviously let us know whose combined 11 is better,
That you don't want the answer to that.
But obviously, we got some cool things to keep up on. QB stock game is something we're going to keep up on. Trying to, take more looks back at, modern sports history to see, how whatever game, basketball, football, soccer, whatever, has changed since that time, whatever. And then maybe doing some more combined 11s in order to just talk some more soccer. So please let us know what you guys think. How you think it went, what we can improve on, what segments you'd want to see. And, Chad, unless you got something else, I think we're going to be good for episode 5.
No, yeah, I'm good. I feel like I look like Diogo Costa right now with my cut, but that's just besides the point.
I think you're more Diogo Costa, the goalkeeper.
Sorry, no. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Diego. No, I don't have the swoop.
Yeah, exactly. So, from myself and Diogo Costa, thank you so much for listening. And congratulations to Colorado for winning that national championship. Really, really proud of them. We will see you guys next week.